On today's show, it's a story about returning to the great outdoors as we tag along with some veterans who are now able to go afield again. We found some folks in Lino Lakes who not only like pheasant hunting and the ringneck pheasant, but their home is, well, almost a pheasant museum. It's that time of year again when Minnesotans take to their ice fishing shacks, but before you warm up your shelter, pay attention to some tips from the folks at HCMC. Our Minnesota Bound Classic this week takes a look at an ancient form of hunting. No, not with bow and arrow, but with a bird of prey. Those stories and more, next.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers.
Hi everybody, Raven and I welcome you to the show. And our first story is one of those that warms your heart and you're glad you were along. It involves some war veterans who, after years of watching the outdoors, now have found a way to go into the great outdoors.
Hey, is that it?
Everybody ready? Anybody that's not, report back.
Come on this way.
His name is Roger. Last name, Illies. Title, Vietnam vet.
Missed it.
Missed? Missed doesn't count. What counts is Roger is hunting again. And so is Randy Faulkner.
Well, it went pretty good for the pheasants. It didn't go so good for me. But we got a lot more stations and a lot more pheasants.
They were so high, they just fly so high. I think they found out I was a good shot because now they go that way and that way. And somebody must have told them.
What's happening here near Avon, Minnesota is, well, payback. An appreciation payback to 20 disabled veterans who, in this case, once enjoyed hunting and thought they'd never hunt again.
Here we go, right over the top of it, right over the top.
Next station.
Welcome to Sandpine Pheasants. Well, we're doing a European hunt here, and the king would take out his royalty on a pheasant hunt, and they didn't want to walk a lot, so the peasants would release the pheasants out of the middle of the woods. So today we're treating these veterans as kings and royalty. We have 10 shooting stations surrounding our woods, and we have 2 veterans at each of the 10 shooting stations, 20 total. We have a veteran, Lawrence, from World War II. He was a POW for a little over 2 years in a German prison camp, and it's really cool. He's a fun guy to have out here.
But there's another story rolling out here in the field. It's about innovation, invention, and compassion.
This event is pretty special to all of us because there's 2 things that we're really passionate about, and one of them is obviously our veterans. And these guys have gone out and literally risked life and limb for our country. And so what we're doing with the Action Track Chair is trying to get these guys back out there and get these chairs in their hands so that they can go back out and do the things that they did before they were out there, before they went and served.
Indeed, the Action Track opens a door to more of the outdoors for disadvantaged people.
The Action Track Chair basically consists of a wheelchair-based setting, and then you have tracks like kind of on a skid loader where you have independent driving tracks that go around. And the benefit of it is that they can traverse over a variety of different terrains that wheels typically will get stuck in. The tracks are fairly aggressive, and it's meant for the off-road. So they do what they're designed to do, and that's to grab a hold and go. You control the chair with the joystick here. So it's just like operating a video game where you're moving, whichever way you move the joystick is the way that the chair is going to go. The nice thing about this chair is it'll actually stand you straight up. Out here it's kind of ideal because then you could shoot in the standing position, you could drive it in the standing position. I tell people the only thing that you can't do on those chairs, or you could do wrong, is not have fun.
But the invention of Action Track began in Marshall, Minnesota for a very sad reason.
It really started, I should begin with my son Jeff. In 1998 he had a car accident and became paralyzed. And I was in the motorsports business and trying to figure out how can we help Jeff and others that are in wheelchairs to be able to get outdoors. In 2008 I started bending some metal and doing some fabricating and welding, and we built our first track chair prototype in 2008. And here we are 3 years later selling hundreds of them. So it's been a good Minnesota project.
All right, have fun, guys.
Here we go, here we go.
Ah, gall darn it.
The guys have been great. They're all smiling, they're all having a good time. So I'm glad they could be here and we could be with you guys.
I like this chair.
This is my office.
Lots of us collect things, but how about a house full of pheasant stuff?
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers. Seven Clans Casino. And by Connecticut.
You know, if you're a pheasant hunter, one of the most treasured trophies, part of the pheasant, is the long flowing tail. When I was a boy, we used to keep those tails, in your bedroom or put them in the garage, wherever your mother would let you. But coming up is a story about some folks who, well, when it comes to pheasants, they have a pheasant house. Home, it's said, is where the heart is, especially if the heart loves ringneck pheasants.
This is one of the rooms where we have the pheasant collection.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty obvious. We call this the pheasant room.
A pheasant room? A ringneck roundup?
Well, one of my favorite things now is this new sun catcher.
I see pheasant art here. I see pheasant pillows, pheasant blankets, pheasant statues, pheasant signs. Have you ever counted all the pheasant items you've got here?
I think in this room there's about 40.
Oh,
but
really?
this is only about half of it.
When did this all start, your pheasant?
A couple items go back 40 to 50 years, but most of it I accumulated in the last 15 years. I started to collect stuff, and pheasants are such a beautiful bird. I mean, you couldn't design a more beautiful bird.
It doesn't bother me at all because I collect Labrador Retriever paraphernalia. So I think Claire and I kind of balance each other out.
And the two labs, Toddy and Dory, of course, are, well, pheasant dogs.
So I've been hunting pheasants, Ron, for 57 years. Minus 4 years, 4.5 years of military service. Never get tired of seeing a beautiful rooster flush. It's a real rush.
How did your relationship with pheasants begin?
Well, I was a younger brother. My older brother, he liked to hunt. He was a real outdoorsman. He liked to hunt a lot. So when I was 12 years old, I was allowed to get a shotgun. So I would tag along behind him. And that kind of started my love of the birds, of the pheasants. This is a print.
Flock after flock, room after room.
Okay, so this is the other pheasant area. This is my office.
Wow.
Where I've also got a lot of pheasant items.
That's an understatement.
It is. I think there's between 80 and 100 total items.
Do you have a favorite in this room?
Well, I'd have to say this clock is one, and then this pheasant right here.
How old did you say that pheasant was?
I'd say between 45 years old, probably. You remember Schmidt?
Yes.
The Schmidt beer can?
Now, is he still in the hunt for more pheasants?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if we really have a goal. fill up all the wall space could be considered a goal. And, but you know, at some point I'm going to have to stop. But if I see something that's pretty unique, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. I have a hard time saying no. No, I don't think about the value at all. Maybe there's some of the items do have quite a bit of value, like the pheasant bourbon bottle that might be worth some money. But no, I don't think about the value. I just think I just like to collect pheasant things.
In a home where your heart is. Now, before you fire up the heater in your old cabin or ice shack, brush up on some tips on the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Ellsworth Creamery and by Ice Force, proven hard water gear.
For all of you ice anglers, it's time to remember a very important lesson about the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning. The experts at HCMC have some words of advice. When it's cold out, thousands of us sleep in deer shacks or fish in ice houses, but danger lurks there. Dr. Cheryl Atkinson, the HCMC medical director for the Center of Hyperbaric Medicine, says these shacks can be a setup for something called carbon monoxide poisoning.
Carbon monoxide is a gas. It's a gas that is released when hydrocarbons burn, meaning any fuel that we think of, whether that's gas or natural gas. Wood is a hydrocarbon. Anytime any of those burn, carbon monoxide is released.
When does carbon monoxide become dangerous? Take a look around your deer shack or ice shack.
A closed environment where somebody is trying to heat that, where they're using a different kind of apparatus like ice fishing houses.
So, what are the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning?
Nausea, headache, a little blurred vision, dizziness. Everybody's getting sick at the same time. The problem is it doesn't in and of itself have any odor. You can't see it.
If you recognize these symptoms, get into fresh air immediately. If the symptoms persist, call for emergency help. When a patient comes into HCMC with CO2 poisoning, they are treated in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
And this is a brand new one, so you're looking at state-of-the-art. We fill the chamber with compressed air, so this is air that we would be breathing if we were visiting in here. And the patient then wears a mask that goes over their nose and mouth like this.
The best solution is to take precautions, so no visits to the oxygen chamber will be necessary.
I love tip-up fishing during the winter season. Well, let me show you how I rig mine up. I love these Frabill Pro thermals. They're rigged with the standard tip-up line, but here's the key. I throw a swivel on the end with a good knot. Then, in the storage case, I've got a bunch of pre-rigged snells that I use. I've got one for crappies and walleyes, another for bass, and a big fluorocarbon with a circle hook for pike. Here's another tip for you. Every time I set my depth on the tip-up, I use a small bobber to mark my depth. That way, if I'm catching fish, I always know how to reset this thing without having to use the weight and go through that whole process. Another tip for you, bells. I throw them on my tip-up, so every time they spring, the bell rings and I know I've got a fish. Try rigging up your tip-ups and using them. They're a great way to fish on the ice.
Hi, my name is Travis Frank. You know, I spend a lot of time in the winter chasing walleyes through the ice. One of my favorite ways to catch them is with a jigging spoon. This is a very popular lure, but there are some things that you can do to make it a little bit better. For instance, when I get a lure out of the package, a lot of times I'll actually take the treble hook, maybe it's a number 6, replace it with a number 4 treble hook, which is just a little bit bigger. What this does is it allows me to hook more fish that grab the lure. I'd say it doubles, maybe triples my success every time on the water. I'm convinced it works for me. You know what? I think you should give it a shot yourself.
Coming up, how about hunting the old-fashioned way? not with bow and arrow, but with a bird of prey.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Hennepin County Medical Center, Minnesota Agricultural Water Resources Coalition, Minnesota soybean farmers and their checkoff, and by Smoothie Oil Company.
You know, when it comes to rabbit hunting, a lot of folks use beagles, which is understandable. But our next story is about Frank Taylor and his birds of prey. Yes, Frank hunts with a hawk.
Usually you can call them in, they'll take a look. There he's turning around looking at us.
If it flies, it soars in the heart of Frank Taylor.
This is pretty tough going in here.
If falconry is the sport of kings, Frank Taylor is His Highness of Minnesota. Falconry adorns his walls.
Of course, all my falconry books.
And fills his books.
From one written in 1250 by Frederick II of Hohenstaufen. The first piece done on falconry in the U.S., a National Geographic, 1920. And it's one of the times they started using, the first time, color pictures of falconry. I'm kind of proud of this one. There's not a lot of us around. This is a tradition that's been handed down for, 4,000 years. And when we fly this bird, much of the equipment the bird is wearing and that we use with it is the same as it was, 2,000 years ago. So it really gives you a connection with antiquity. And this is Zorro. He's a Harris hawk. He's 2 years old. I got him from the World Bird Sanctuary down in St. Louis, Missouri, where he was bred in captivity down there.
A federal state permit is required to possess these birds of prey.
In the sport of falconry, it's not a pet keeping situation because these birds don't make pets. They show very little loyalty to us. They basically want to play their role in the food chain and allow us to tag along and tolerate us to the point where they let us watch what they do.
In the bird world, these are feathered jets designed to hunt with speed, beak, and claw.
That's where the word raptor comes from. It's from the Latin word rapere, meaning to grasp. And it's birds that get their food through grabbing it with their feet.
It's also easy to see why, after 4,000 years, those of us bound to the ground continue to marvel at the poetry of the raptor's flight.
It's pretty fair. The quarry gets away most of the time. What you're watching is that design of nature, the beauty of this bird, how it fits into its environment and how it goes after its quarry, but also how the quarry has evolved to evade the hawk.
Each raptor species hunts to match its aerial skills.
Say if you're using a hawk like this, you're hunting in brushy areas. He's got a long tail for steering around the brush, fairly short wings so he can go through the woods. If you're flying a falcon, they've got long wings, short tail, they're built for speed.
Here we go.
So you fly them from what's called a waiting on position. You release the falcon over a dog that's on point.
Come on, Oak. Hiya, come on.
In ancient times, of course, the kings were hoping the raptors would hunt down the next royal feast. Tasty breast of pheasant, perhaps.
Beautiful, boys, beautiful! That's pretty good.
But remember, these are birds with bird-sized brains.
Now you gotta get up on this, buddy. Not the car, you can't use that. We're closing that up. Here we go. Come on, Skip. Good boy. Ooh, there goes a mouse.
History books don't tell us this, but 4,000 years ago may have been the first feast not fit for a king.
He got it. And he's got his mouse. There we go. All right.
All I can say is when it comes to rabbit hunting with a hawk, Frank Taylor has the patience of that brush pile, so to speak. Well, that about does it for us. Remember, introduce a kid to the great outdoors. I'm Ron Sharon, of course, the star of the show, who is not a rabbit hunter, or better not be, is Raven.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433. For more information on these stories and more, catch us on the web at mnbound.com.